Juneflower, in Jesus' name, chapter 15. Ricky thought he would go crazy before he heard from Jason again. Mark and Joey thought the same thing. Keegan and Chaz had stopped the other Yukon, and Jeffy's GPS ankle bracelet was found in the driver's pocket. So, that meant the girls were in a third vehicle, heading to somewhere in northern Arizona. They didn't dare put out an APB for the Yukon the girls traveled in, for fear of putting Eric and Shelley in danger. So, they all drove into Arizona and headed north. Cam had not been found, but the motel room where the girls had been taken had been located and was being processed by the FBI. Back at the house, Jody did her best to keep the women focused on a positive outcome, while Maddie soothed everyone's nerves with food and kindness. While young Eric was doing his best to comfort his mom, the other teenagers were doing their best to help young Eric, as he was feeling very responsible for not keeping track of his sister. By the time Jason finally contacted the men, the sun was high in the sky. "Get your heads right, boys, we're going in," Jason said brightly. "Spill it," Ricky urged. FBI got a hit on the Infinity logo. There's a very secretive and very high-tech genetics lab tucked away in the northwest corner of Arizona. Word has it that most of the building is underground, built in the side of a mountain. Finally tracked down the name of the place. Gednar, GEDNAR, stands for Genetics Engineering DNA Research. Jeffy had it right, except she missed the R. That kept throwing it out of the system. The company is privately owned and funded by American billionaire Julian Black, who is renowned as a genius in genetics. Records show he's been at many of the high IQ functions Jeffy would have attended over the years. "How far away are we?" Ricky asked. "The place is located in the mountains east of Round Rock, Arizona. By car, it would take you at least 4 more hours, but I've had 2 choppers in the air, and I'm sending one of them to pick you all up at Tuba City Municipal Airport in about 15 minutes. Once you're in the air, I'll brief you. FBI will be moving in too, but I have their okay to send my agents in covertly to find and protect the hostages. That means, Ricky and Mark, you are deputized and will be on my payroll. Don't mess up and accidentally kill someone, unless, of course, it's self-defense." "Don't want revenge, Jason," Ricky said calmly. "Just want my family back, and that includes Kimmy." "You don't have to tell me that. I just want you to know that I realize it must be difficult for you right now, having to fight the need to be here to get your daughter back. I want to assure you she's just as high a priority for us as everyone else." Jason blew out a breath. "Thank you. It is a fight, but I know I'm in the best place to help her. Agent Deal's on the chopper. He's the one going bonkers. We'll do our best to keep him calm." While they drove to the airport in Tuba City, John got on the phone and gave Jody the update, knowing she would know just the right way to let everyone know what was going down. New scene. Julian Black smoothed back his black hair, checking for stray grays, which he'd recently taken care of with his men-only treatment. He stood tall, turned sideways to check his profile and to make sure his black suit fell perfectly on his form. He smiled. He was fit and trim and hardly looked a day over 30, and some of that was due to his excellent daily regimen, but most was his breeding. His line was extremely pure, of that he was certain. Preliminary tests on Juneflower's parents also showed some amazing DNA traits. So much so, he was tempted to use the eggs and sperm he'd harvested to create a few more Kino children. He'd keep that option in reserve. For now, he had 3 beautiful young women waiting in his outer office to meet him. One of them was his heart's desire, Juneflower Kino. Together, they would create a line of DNA superior to all others. Pasting a smile on his face, he licked his thumb and smoothed his mustache and headed through the door. He stopped just on the other side, allowing them to look their fill. His man, Gaff, stood next to Juneflower, who sat tall in the red velvet Queen Anne armchair, looking like the royalty she was. The other two sat side by side on the small antique settee. All three had their wrists bound by nylon cable, and all three young ladies looked up at him when he entered the office. The youngest's eyes were fearful. The Korean girl's eyes reflected extreme anger. And then there was Juneflower. She appeared calm and inquisitive. How very perfect. He smiled at her. In person, she was even more beautiful than he thought. Her full lips, her warm, gentle eyes. Ladies, he said as he approached. Think again, Kimmy responded. He glared at her. Ah, yes, the feisty one. You fancy yourself a tough girl. I don't think you'll think that by the time we get through with you. Taylor gasped at his words, and Jeffy stood. You said you wanted me. I'm here. You may not hurt my friend. He thought for a moment and nodded. Very well. I will see that she is well taken care of. He moved to kneel in front of Taylor. And you, my dear child, thought to save your auntie? That's very sweet. You actually do look very much like her. Some of the same DNA, obviously, but where are your brains, huh? He stroked her head as if she were a puppy. There now, don't cry. I'll make sure you get back to your home all safe and sound. That is, after I run some tests on you. No, Jeffy protested. He turned to her and smiled. Come now, Dr. Kino. You mustn't be too demanding. My patience doesn't have boundaries. He knelt down in front of her and ran his hand reverently over her hair, to her cheek, to her collarbone. You are the most beautiful creature ever to walk this earth. I am enamored of you, Juneflower. I suppose you know that. He reached up and ran his fingers over her lips. Ah, to taste the softness. Jeffy jerked her head away, and his eyes bore into hers, and then he stood. You will find, Juneflower, that I am not unreasonable. You are mad, Jeffy said. He turned on her, grasping her around the throat and pulling her up from the chair. She tried to use her fist to break his hold and suck in her breath, but he was too strong. Taylor and Kimmy jumped on his back, pounding on him, and Gaff jerked Kimmy away and tossed her across the room, and by the time he'd done the same to Taylor, Kimmy was back, this time coming down with a hammer fist to the top of Mr. Black's head. That seemed to bring the man out of it. He released Jeffy. Breathing hard, he backed away from her and straightened his suit. Gasping for air, she looked up at him, her brows raised. That should tell you something, he warned. Jeffy shrugged. It definitely proves my point. His hand struck out, slapping her face with a loud smack. It should tell you that even though I hold you in high esteem, there are some things I insist upon, and as my future wife, I insist you learn respect. He rose and motioned to Gaff. Come and take the two imposters to their cells. Gaff grabbed the girls by their arms and walked them out. Julian motioned to the chair behind Jeffy. Please, have a seat. It appears we've started out on the wrong foot. She sat only because she felt a little dizzy. Julian leaned over and stroked her head. There now. Truly, I'm sorry. I found I can be a little oversensitive about certain things. If only you can understand how long I've waited to meet you in person, how I've worshipped you from afar. I knew, Juneflower, I just knew that you would understand me and understand my work, that your brilliant mind is the only one that can possibly see the potential for what we can do together. And our children, oh, sweet Juneflower, our children will be amazing, evolved specimens of the human race. They will even surpass us. He rose and walked away for a moment and then turned. Here I am speaking of our children, and we aren't even married yet. Of course, one doesn't have to be married in order to create children, but I'd prefer it, wouldn't you? He didn't give her a chance to answer before he went on, which was just fine with her. My mother will be very happy indeed when I tell her I'm going to marry a sweet Catholic girl in the old chapel down in Saint Louis. I'm not Catholic. He smiled. Well, she won't know that. He stroked a finger down her arm. Ah, Juneflower, I so look forward to that day. I can't tell you how much I want to make love to you. That's all I can do to keep myself from doing that right now. However, I will honor my mother by allowing you to save yourself for me. Jeffy thought it would be wiser to not respond. He stroked her hair, her face, her arm. Still, for now, I will kiss you. You must allow it. Never. Well, let's talk about that a moment. I don't think you're in a position to be giving orders. Maybe once we're married, you will become the bossy little wife most women become. But for now, I hold all the cards. Tell me, Juneflower, do you want me to release your parents? Of course I do. I promised I would return them to your family as soon as you agreed to all my stipulations. Still, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It will take time to help you to see just how good we'll be together, how together we will change the world. For now, I just simply want to kiss you. I want to see my parents. I assure you they're fine. I want to see them now. Allow the kiss, and I will allow you that boon. Surely you don't think you can get something for nothing in this world. She couldn't help the tears that came to her eyes. Where was Cameron? Why hadn't he come in yet? He should have been right behind her. She was positive he'd followed her. Even once they'd removed her GPS, he never would have allowed her out of his sight. She needed him, and she needed to see her parents. And as much as the thought turned her stomach, she realized she'd have to comply in order to see them. After several seconds, she looked up into the madman's eyes and nodded. He smiled. I see you understand your situation. You are brilliant, Dr. Kino. He pulled her up out of the chair and moved close and tilted her face up, and she closed her eyes. His mouth came down on hers, not harsh and demanding like she expected, but soft and lingering in a worshipful manner. Somehow that was worse. Finally, he pulled away. He, too, had tears on his face. Oh, Juneflower, life is going to be so good for us. You touch my soul. She shuddered. May I see my parents now? Smiling, he went to his desk and picked up a remote and pointed it at the TV. The screen flashed on. She gasped as she realized she wouldn't get to see them in person. But, he shrugged, I said you could see them. You see them. You have no honor, she accused. You knew I meant to see them in person. Your time is running out, he said, not bothering to respond to her words. She moved closer to the screen. Her father and mother sat on the floor side by side in a full lotus position, apparently deep in meditation. Jeffy felt a rush of warmth and love and pride and strength. Such strength locked up in that room. These people were definitely not victims. They accepted what was and bided their time, working with their minds to effect change and to be prepared. You see? They're fine. Well, how do I know that isn't just a loop of a video you took of them? Delightful question. But then again, I knew you were smart, he said, laughing at his joke. He pressed another button. Hello, Kinos. Her parents looked up, listening. I have someone here who'd like to say hello. Mom? Dad? Jeffy said through the tears clogging her throat. Her parents immediately rose. Jeffy, Shelley said. Jeffy, where are you? I'm in this horrible man's office. He's going to let you go. Jeffy, does anyone... Eric began. That's enough, Julian said quickly. Don't worry, honey. Everything will work out, Eric said. I know it will, Jeffy answered. I'm not worried, she said, glaring at her captor. Say goodbye to your mommy and daddy, he said, as he clicked the button and their images disappeared. Your parents' arrogance irritates me. It's not arrogance, it's confidence, Jeffy corrected. They're confident that soon we will all be free of you and your crazy ideas. He smiled. I, too, am confident. I'm confident you'll see the benefit of our union. I'm confident that in order to free your parents and now your friend and your niece, you will agree to my plans. I'm confident that once you give your word to marry me and stand beside me in my goals, you would never go back on it. After all, the Kinos have quite a reputation. You never lie, and once you give your word, it's gold. It's one of the things that attracted me to you in the first place. I've watched you over the years, Juneflower. Your behavior is stellar. Well, except for one small thing. She couldn't care less what he found in her to be lacking, yet maybe it would give her some clue as to how to handle him. And what small thing is that? You gave yourself to that boy. She glared at him, not willing to correct his assumption. She'd never done more than kiss Cam. You were so young, and he took great advantage of you. She gave a bitter laugh. He didn't take advantage of me. I took advantage of him, and I can't believe you've been watching me for that long. I knew from the moment I met you that you would change my life. I've met you before? His eyes opened wide. You don't remember me, do you? He frowned and pressed his hand to his heart. I was certain I made an impression on you, apparently not. I was a guest speaker at a Mensa meeting. You shook my hand afterward. Jeffy realized now why he looked so familiar. She did remember him, but somehow felt like she wouldn't grace him with that information. She shook her head. Sorry, don't remember. What's your name again? Black? His eyes narrowed. Dr. Julian Black. And you're in the field of genetics? I am in the top 1% of my field, he said, and I've watched you for a long time, thinking I would run tests on you. It bothered me that you allowed that boy to sully you. When he broke your heart and left you, I have to say I was quite pleased. I knew you would get over it, and apparently you have. Now it will be my turn to taste your sweetness. It will be difficult to forget that another has had you, but I believe I can push that fact aside. She didn't know what made her say it. Perhaps it was his arrogance, but she couldn't hold back. You have your facts mixed up. That boy, as you put it, and I are very much together. He grinned. Now I know you're lying, and lying does not become you, June. I must say I'm disappointed in you. Though I understand you're merely trying a tactic to discourage me. It won't work. I'm not lying. Oh, he did break up with me, but while I was in Africa, we got back together. June Flower, you... What? You don't believe me? I haven't heard anything about a boyfriend. My sources are completely dependable. She shrugged. I guess they're not that dependable. He gazed into her face, and he suddenly realized that she was telling the truth. His eyes registered fury, directed at both his informants, who were sadly lacking in efficiency, and at her. Have you given yourself to him? She smiled. What do you think? When? What does it matter? It matters. You must be clean. When did you last have relations with him? Just before I left the house to come here. I can examine you. I can find out the truth. You want the truth? Here's the truth, Julian, she said, refusing to honor him with his title. Your entire plan is absolutely ridiculous. Even if I agreed to everything and let you... Even if I agreed to everything and you let my family leave, they wouldn't stand idly by while you and I marry and have genetically altered children. It would be only a matter of time before they find you and put an end to your pitiful, miserable life. You are whacked out. You may be genius, but I'm thinking it's more like an idiot savant. Eyes flashing, he struck out, knocking her to the floor. She looked up at him, smiling. Coward. Take these bindings off my wrists and face me then. He moved to his desk and pushed a button. Payne, get in here. He turned back to her. I asked you to cooperate. I wanted to show you what we could accomplish together. You in your field of medicine and me in genetics. We could alter humanity. We could develop a species of human that doesn't get sick, that doesn't grow old. We would be revered and respected. We would be thought of as gods. But no, you wouldn't even give the decency of allowing me to explain things. Instead, you discard me out of hand. Because you failed the very first test of anything good or worthy, Jeffy snapped. What test is that? Anything that takes away the free will, the freedom of choice from another individual is skewed and of the darkness. You, Julian, are of the darkness. You've followed the dark path, and it's not because you want to do something good for mankind, but because you want to be revered and worshipped. There is only one God, Julian, and you ain't him. You are nothing more than a very sick man. The door opened, saving Jeffy from another strike. What's the order of the day? Payne asked casually, eyeing Jeffy. The Kinos are yours. Do with them what you will. Payne grinned. No, Jeffy screamed. Let them go. It's not my fault your plan is so ludicrous. You'll never get away with this. You hurt my parents, and you'll go down for sure. This whole place will go down. No one knows where you are, Juneflower. No one knows much about this facility at all. Perhaps, though, you will come around. Perhaps a little time, and seeing what Payne has in store for your parents will help you to be a little more malleable. He turned to Payne. Don't kill them. Do make them suffer. Gladly, Payne said as he closed the door. New scene. Well, if she's here, then I'm sure Cam and her brothers aren't far behind, Eric assured his wife. But how can you know? Because I know them. Maybe she gave them the slip. Eric shook his head. They would have known that she planned to do that. They would have been on the lookout for that. She might have been able to get past one or two, but not Ricky, Joey, Mark, Cam, and Jason. They're probably outside the building right now, figuring out the best way to storm the castle. Shelley wrung her hands. I just can't help but wonder what he's doing to her. Is she frightened? Has he harmed her? Did she sound frightened to you? Shelley only shrugged. She may have been a little upset, but she wasn't afraid. The door whooshed open. As usual, two men approached with guns drawn, while Payne stood by the door punching buttons. The door to the tiny torture chamber opened, and once the cuffs locked securely around Eric's wrist, Payne moved forward, a large grin on his face. You can thank your daughter for me being here, Payne said. Apparently, she's not being very agreeable to Black's plans. Good for her, Eric said. I would expect no less. Payne moved close and placed his palm over Eric's heart. I know what makes you suffer, he whispered. Do you now? Eric returned. Payne turned suddenly. You two get out. The two men who'd been busy aggravating Shelley by reaching out and touching her in various places looked up, their brows creased. But we were hoping we could get in on some of the action. I said to get out, Payne ordered, his voice calm. Shaking their heads, they left the room. Payne went over to the door and closed it. When he turned, he saw Shelley nodding at Eric. What? Payne said sarcastically. Is he telling you to be strong, to fight hard? He must be, because he knows I intend to make him suffer, and the only real way to do that is to make you suffer. He smiled. Oh, the things I'm going to do to you. He moved close to Eric again, running his hands over the muscles of his chest. Come on, Payne, Eric said. You know it's not her you want, it's me. You want me, but you're afraid to admit it. You think it will make you look like less of a man. Payne's hands moved to grasp the waistline of Eric's slacks. He stayed like that for several seconds before he looked into Eric's eyes. What I want is to make you suffer. Turning abruptly, he moved toward Shelley. She actually smiled at him. He grabbed her by the front of her shirt, but instead of her trying to pull away, she grabbed his shoulders and pulled him closer, raising her knee at the same time. He crumpled to the floor. Shelley ran toward Eric and placed her hands on his for just a second before Payne regained his composure and came up behind her and pulled her away. You're going to die for that, he yelled, swinging her away to where he stood between her and Eric. I don't think so, she said sweetly, giving him a slight shove. He stepped backward with the force of her push, and Payne tried to scream as powerful thighs closed around his neck. He clawed at Eric's legs, trying to make him let go, but no way was Eric going to relinquish his hold. He and his wife had been over this scenario many times. Shelley had executed the plan flawlessly. She'd gotten away from Payne, run to Eric to bring Payne close, reversed positions, and made sure Payne was off balance. Eric gave his legs a final squeeze, twisting at the same time. Payne's body went limp and hit the floor. Hit the release button over there, baby, Eric said softly. Shelley's hand shook, but she found the button and pressed it. The cuffs released. Eric knelt down by Payne, thinking maybe he'd killed the man. He wouldn't feel sorry if he did. However, Payne was breathing. Barely. Eric removed a knife from Payne's waist and a gun from a shoulder holster. Then quickly, Eric maneuvered Payne into place and had Shelley lock both his wrists and legs into the shackles. They pressed the button to open the door and made their way toward the elevator. New scene. I almost have it, Agent Jensen Deal said as he worked on the computerized locks outside the gate of the front entrance to the compound. The building seemed to be built into the side of a mountain, and going through the gate seemed to be the only way in. He was finding it difficult to concentrate as he thought of the woman he loved somewhere inside, going through who knows what. But he was the best hacker working for Ameritech, and if anyone could get in, it was him. Seconds later, the lock sprang, and Ameritech agents swarmed the compound. Jason had pulled them from every assignment. It looked like something out of a spy movie, agents moving stealthily across the grounds in broad daylight, neutralizing anyone who came in their path. Ricky, Mark, Joey, Jeff, and Keegan moved together as one, with Jensen and John Sweet bringing up the rear. Dozens more agents spread across the grounds. They made their way toward the large building, which looked like any other modern office building or possibly even a hospital. Surrounded by the rocks, cactuses, and drought-proof flowers used in most Arizona landscaping, it was hard to see the place as a den of criminal activity. There were dozens of cars in the parking lot, and it looked like any office building in any metropolitan area. They put their guns away as they arrived at the front door. It was locked and would open, it appeared, only by a key card. From a side door to the left, a man in uniform approached. "Sorry, no one gets in without authorization," a beefy man said. Keegan pulled out his .357 Magnum. "This is my authorization." The man went for his gun, but Joey stepped forward and took him out with a few well-placed punches. "Thanks, Joey, but I had it covered." Joey shrugged. "Well, I didn't feel like killing anyone this early in the game. The man is only doing his job." Keegan frowned. "Geez, guys, I wasn't going to kill him." The others only laughed. It wasn't that Joey really thought Keegan would kill the guy. He'd become a joke. It had become a joke that Keegan, a former FBI agent, had a happy trigger finger. That joke had evolved since his being called in front of a congressional committee for excessive violence when he'd killed over 24 terrorists while trying to rescue Jeff Davis. Jeff moved forward. "You guys want to keep your heads in the game, please?" he reprimanded, although he knew their buoyant demeanor came from the knowledge that they were very close to rescuing the people they loved. They used the guard's card to open the door, and as expected, as they moved through the front lobby, they were accosted by 6 more security officers. Keegan, Jeff, and Joey had their weapons pulled and pointed. Joey hoped they were not about to participate in a bloodbath. It was Ricky who stepped forward and saved the day. "Hey, look. You guys know who I am, right? Do you recognize me?" A few of the officers nodded. "And I'm sure you've heard on the news about my parents having been kidnapped, right?" A few more nods. "Well, we've tracked them down to this building, to this operation, run by a man named Julian Black." There was a murmur from all present, including several employees who'd been in the lobby when the agents came in. They all stood around now, their hands raised up as if they were being robbed. Now, I'm just going to let you in on the fact that the FBI is on the way to raid this place, and if you don't want to go down with the boss man, I suggest you cooperate. One of the guards motioned toward the other men. "Who are these guys?" "We're Ameritech agents," Keegan explained, holding out his credentials. "We're licensed to carry, and we don't want to hurt anyone. We just want to help get the Kinos back, safe and sound." After a few seconds, the guards relinquished their weapons. The Ameritech agents holstered theirs, and Mark nodded at one young guard. "Part of this facility is underground?" The man nodded. "How many floors?" 6. 2 are underground." "What's on those 2 underground floors?" Keegan asked. "Dr. Black has a personal suite on ground floor 1. He lives there most of the year. He also has an office down there." "Anything else on this ground floor 1? "Well, there's an OR for sterile procedures and Dr. Black's personal lab." "And ground floor 2, that would be the lowest floor?" Joey asked. "Yes, and what's down there?" "Ground floor 2 has the, well, we call them cells." "Cells?" Joey asked, eyeing Keegan, who only shook his head. "Yeah, people volunteer to participate in controlled medical experiments. They stay in the cells so that Dr. Black can completely control their environment." "That's where we're heading. Who can get us down there?" The security guard looked forward toward an older co-worker. Give them your card. The older man hesitated and looked at Mark. You think Dr. Black is holding the Kinos hostage? We know he is. In this facility. Yes, and kidnapping is a capital offense punishable by death in some cases, Mark informed. The older man handed his card to the younger guard. Take them down. I'll wait for the FBI to arrive. Joey nodded toward the front door. We have Ameritech agents outside. No one leaves before FBI arrives and allows it. Got it? The guard nodded. Where's Dr. Black? Keegan asked. In his office downstairs. Keegan raised his eyebrows at the guards. No one warns him. One of the guards cleared his throat. Too late. I thought we were about to be robbed. I phoned down to him when you first came in. Let's go, Jeff said. Jeff, Keegan Sweet, take subfloor 1, Joey ordered as they boarded the elevator. Me, Jensen, Ricky, Mark will take the cells on 2. Let's move. New scene. Jeffy tried very hard to keep her eyes focused. She lay strapped to a table. The horrible woman with the steely eyes and stone-cold, beautiful face had given her a shot of something, and it was playing havoc with Jeffy's equilibrium. She tried to think of how to free herself or how to get to her parents, but the only thing that came to her mind was Cameron. She realized now, in the bleakest moment, how much she craved him, how much she loved him, and how much she depended on the strength of his love for her. He did love her. He'd proven that. If he wasn't here now, then that meant something horrible had happened to him, and that thought filled her with terror. Her captor entered the room. Dr. Julian Black. The suit was gone. He now wore blue scrubs. He was smiling that sick smile that made Jeffy just want to punch him in the face. Moving to her side, he laid his hand on her shoulder as if comforting her. Jeffy tried to glare at him. What did you give me? She asked, her words slurring. Just a little Demerol to calm you down and take the edge off. In a few minutes, Marilyn will insert the IV and will put you out for a while. You won't even remember anything. Why? What are you going to do? She said, working hard to get the words out and even harder to keep the fear from her voice. Well, you said in no uncertain terms that you would never marry me and have my children. I prefer to have you in our children's lives, but in all actuality, all I really need from you are the eggs. She shook her head back and forth. No, please. You can't do this. He patted her shoulder. Calm yourself. What difference will it make to you if you're minus a few eggs? He leaned over her and ran his hand down her body to rest on her pelvis. They're all in there, just waiting for me to bring them out and start them on their way. Jeffy forced the words. You can't just take eggs. It's a process. Surely you know that. As usual, you underestimate me. I've developed a procedure that allows me to extract the eggs from the ovaries almost instantly. Excuse me, Dr. Black, Marilyn said uneasily. He stood up quickly and frowned at his assistant. What is it? You have a call from upstairs. I think you should take it. Very well. Jeff watched as he left the room and kept an eye on him through the glass window. Meantime, Marilyn was unstrapping her arms. You're letting me go? Jeffy asked slowly. The woman ignored her. Julian re-entered the room, his face drawn and pale. He took Marilyn's hands in his. You know what to do. The most important thing is to preserve the eggs and sperm taken from the Kinos. I don't care about anything else. All my research is backed up. Marilyn nodded her head, her face as cold and impassive as ever. She rushed from the room. Julian turned to Jeffy. Come on, my love. We have to leave. He pulled her to a sitting position. She leaned forward, her head resting against his chest. What's happening? You and I are going for a walk through the tunnel. Come on now. I need you to try to stand. He lifted her from the gurney and placed her feet on the floor. I don't want to go anywhere with you, she said. Oh, you're going all right. Come on. He jerked her along beside him. She stumbled, but he pulled her back up, put his arm around her waist, and led her through the door and down the long corridor. It seemed they walked forever, but maybe that was because she struggled to simply place one foot in front of another. It seemed he'd led her to a dead end. for they stopped at the end of one of those long corridors. There were no doors. The only thing Jeffy could see was a framed sign hanging on the wall that showed evacuation procedures in case of fire. To her surprise, Black reached up and slid that sign to the right, revealing a small cubby that looked like a miniature ATM machine. He pulled a plastic card from his breast pocket and held it under a scanner, then punched some buttons. Jeffy gasped and stumbled back as the entire wall opened up. He grabbed her and pulled her through. She turned to watch the wall behind her close once again. "You don't remember coming in this way?" Black asked. She only shook her head. "Well, I guess that's because it was already open for you." She stopped and made an effort to pull away from him. "You need to let me go. That, my sweet June flower, will never happen." New scene. Payne's a piece of work. We do all the work and he gets to have all the fun. When the elevator door chimed and opened, the two flunkies leaning there in the corridor jumped to attention. When they saw who was on the elevator, they tried to pull their guns, but the four men were too fast for them. Within seconds, the two lay unconscious and bound. The young security guard who'd ridden down with them on the elevator stood open-mouthed, and Joey looked over at him, motioning him forward. "You okay?" The guard cleared his throat. You guys are good." "Yeah, okay, we're going to need you to open all the cells." The man nodded. They started down the corridor, but stopped when they heard a small sound. The group moved silently and peered around the next corner. There was a shrill cry, and then the elder Kinos were enfolded in the arms of their loved ones. Ricky let go of his father, pulled back, and looked him in the eye. Eric nodded, assuring his son that he was fine and accepting his love. Ricky then turned to Shelley and grabbed her away from her two sons and hugged her tightly before he pulled away. "Have you seen Taylor or Kimmy?" Ricky asked. Shelley's face registered shock. "What? Taylor?" "No time to explain. Let's go." They moved down the corridor. The security guard used his card to open each cell. When he opened Eric's and Shelley's, he was surprised to see Payne hanging on the wall, awake and furious. "Get me out of here, you idiot," Payne yelled. Eric peered inside the cell, gave Payne a smile, stepped back, and closed the door. They went on past. When the next cell door was open, there was another female shriek. Taylor jumped into her father's arms, and Kimmy was scooped up and almost smothered by Jensen. When Jensen finally put her down, he fingered his mic. "We have Kimmy. She's good. We have them all but Jeffy." New scene. Guns drawn, Keegan Tanner and Jeff Davis left Julian Black's office and made their way down the hall to the next room, a lab. They eased through a waiting room and found the door to the lab locked. Jeff blew the lock away, and they moved quickly into the rear of the facility and came up short. A woman sat calmly at a high work table, typing on a laptop computer. She was maybe 30, 35, and she was beautiful. She had porcelain skin, dark red lips, and chin-length black hair. She looked up at them with her bright blue eyes filled with disdain. Keegan and Jeff instantly knew she was no innocent employee. She slowly used one finger to close the laptop. Jeff moved forward quickly. "Back off from the computer, sweetheart." "I don't know what you think you're doing in here," she began. "Save it," Keegan snapped at her. "Stand up." She only rolled her eyes. He holstered his gun and pulled her up off the high stool she sat on and leaned her over the table, doing a quick search. Meanwhile, Jeff raised the lid of the computer. "Interesting," he said before he moved his hands quickly over the keys. "You have no warrant to do that," she protested. "Warrant will be through that door in a second," he said as he read reports on the most recent lab work completed. "Where's Black?" Keegan asked as he turned her around and pushed her back down onto her stool. "I don't know. Try his office," she answered, raising her chin high. Keegan smiled. She was bold and brusque, and she probably assisted with tests run on Eric and Shelley. "You know, if you cooperate, things will go easier on you." She turned her head to watch Jeff as he made his way around the room, opening cabinets, shuffling through papers. "I don't know that at all," she answered coolly. "Fine, have it your way. We'll find him, and then he's going down, and you're going down with him." "I highly doubt that." "You don't think we have enough?" "I highly doubt you'll find him," she said with a smile. Keegan shrugged. "I guess we'd better get to it." Jeff walked up to him, holding nylon ties. Here, I found them over there. Keegan moved her to a chair and bound her wrists and ankles with the cables, then used more of them to bind her to the chair. He backed away. That ought to hold you. She smiled. For the time being. They left her, moved quickly through the rest of the entire level, but Black was nowhere to be found. New scene. Jeffy wasn't sure if she could take another step. Every time she sank back, though, Black jerked her up again. Her fear was building. Obviously, he was sneaking her out some secret escape route. She kept telling him she would be found. But would she? She never felt so alone in her life, alone and helpless. Closing her eyes, she tried to communicate with her father, but the Demerol, along with her emotional state of high anxiety, was keeping her from being able to concentrate. They turned a corner, and there was the exit. He pushed a button on the side of the wall. The door opened, and he pushed her through into the daylight. Squinting, Jeffy looked around, trying to get her bearings, but all she could see was the same dirt, rocks, small desert trees, and scrub she'd seen earlier when she'd arrived. The Yukon was still there, parked on the gravel drive, and behind it a large steel gate. Holding her firmly with one hand, Julian fished in his pocket and pulled out a remote, pointed it, and pushed buttons. The car doors unlocked, the car started, and the large gate began to swing slowly out. Arms firmly around her waist, he pulled her toward the car, flung open the back door, and tried to shove her inside. She fought. She fought like she'd never fought before, because she knew if she got in that car and he drove away with her, she may never see the people she loved again. It was difficult to make her body move, but she kicked out with her legs, using the car seat as leverage, and Black stumbled backward, both of them landing on the hard, rock-covered ground. Immediately, she turned over and began to crawl away, scraping her legs and knees across the rough terrain. He grabbed her from behind, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her up. She screamed and kicked. He turned her around and drew back his fist, intending to knock her out. You want to dance? Dance with me, came a fierce voice. Jeffy's head jerked around. Cam! Black dropped her. You think you can take me on? Cam smiled. Yeah, I do. Black settled down into a weak back stance, apparently fancying himself a martial artist. Cam had no patience. He struck out quickly, and the man went down. Come on, Cam growled. Julian struggled to his feet, wiped blood from his nose. Cam gave him time to get his bearings and then allowed him to charge. Julian swung at Cam and tried to kick Cam's knee at the same time. To Cam's eye, however, the man was moving in slow motion, and he easily deflected the attempts. Cam thought it would be fun to toy with this guy and really punish him, beat him to a bloody pulp. But Cam was tired and weak from the accident and this entire ordeal, and he was pretty much out of patience. Squaring off, he drove a fist into Black's gut and supplied an uppercut to his jaw, and Black crumpled, completely unconscious. Cam dropped to the ground, pulled Jeffy into his arms, resting her across his lap. Are you okay? Think so, she slurred. You've been drugged? Yeah. Cam fingered the blue hospital gown, shuddering at what that meant. He was gonna operate? He was gonna steal eggs from my ovaries, but something stopped him and he drugged me out here. What stopped him? Don't know. He got a phone call. She shrugged it off as her mind jumped around. Oh, Cam, I was so worried about you. Where have you been? Noticing the scrapes and bruises, she wheeled her hand up to touch his face, but couldn't make it happen. It dropped to her side. So sorry, baby. I had a little accident. Little? Some idiot pulled right into me, knocked my bike down a ravine. They took off, probably DUI. It was all I could do to climb back up to the top and run in the direction I last saw your vehicle. It was only luck that I literally stumbled across 3 Yukons parked at a motel a few blocks away. I stood outside the door thinking I'd charged the room, but I was woozy and pretty sure I had a concussion and wasn't confident that I could take on all 3 men. So instead of confronting them, I decided it would be better to hitch a ride with them. I got in the very back of one of the cars. But the other cars, they didn't come here. Well, I know that now. I didn't know it then. I guess someone who didn't know God could say it was pure luck, but I know God had a hand in that. You got in our car? You were with us on the ride here? Yeah. I think I passed out because when I woke, you girls were gone. I got out and tried to find a way inside, but no go. I figured we were at a back entrance. He pointed to the left. I climbed up over those rocks to get over the gate and tried to make my way around, but after a few miles, I realized I wouldn't be able to find the front, not in my condition. Something kept telling me to turn around and go back, and I finally listened. Looks like I got back here just in time. God's timing is perfect. Thank you, Jesus, she prayed softly. I was so afraid, but I'm so happy that you're here now. He wiped at her tears. Yeah, Jeffy, I'm here, and you're alive, and God Almighty, I love you more than life itself. He kissed her softly, then pulled back and gazed into her eyes. They both looked up as they heard the sound of helicopter blades chopping in the air. Cam squinted, trying to locate the chopper so he could identify it, but it never got close enough. He looked back down at Jeffy's face. Did you see your parents in there? Or Taylor? Or Kimmy? I saw Mom and Dad on a video screen. We have to help them, Cam. They're in grave danger. Taylor and Kimmy have been locked up somewhere, too. He nodded his head. I need to communicate with Jason. My phone was lost, and my helmet phone was damaged in the accident. I'm going to just sit you down here for a minute. He moved her onto the ground and limped over to the man lying prone and searched him, removing a cell phone from his pocket. He punched in numbers and pressed the phone to his ear. It's me, Jason. Thank God. Where are you? I don't know. In the desert, on a mountain. I have Jeffy and her kidnapper. Caught them coming out some door from some kind of underground facility. There are choppers circling nearby. Is that you? No, that's the FBI. Cam listened as Jason explained where he was and what went down. And when Cam ended the call, he went back to Jeffy, a large smile on his face. Collapsing next to her due to exhaustion and pain from his accident and loss of blood and relief, he gathered her in his arms once again. Are we going back in? She asked. Your brothers are inside, and they have your parents and Taylor and Kimmy. Jeffy burst into grateful tears. Cam held her close, rocking her against his chest, and watched as one of the choppers came into view and started a descent. Within minutes, they were being lifted over the mountain to the front of the compound. The second the choppers touched down, Cam stepped out, lifted Jeffy, and carried her to the waiting crowd of people. He set her down in front of her parents and stepped back and watched as she was enfolded in their arms, in their hearts, and in their love. And Cam yearned to be included in that circle, though admittedly right now, he just yearned for a bed. He was dizzy, nauseated, so very tired, and having trouble staying upright. It was John Sweet who made his way to Cam's side. Hey, mate, you're hurt, John said. I'll be okay. He pointed at Cam's leg. You're losing blood. Cam looked down at his own thigh. That must be why I don't feel so good. John smiled. Must be. Must have happened when I wrecked my bike, Cam reasoned, realizing his hands felt numb. Probably, John agreed. I think I'm going to either throw up or pass out. Well, I'd prefer you not throw up, John answered Cam, motioning to Keegan and Jeff, who stood nearby. Cam shrugged. Okay, he said as his eyes rolled into the back of his head. Between Jeff, Keegan, and John, they caught Cam and lowered him softly to the ground. New scene. The grass where he lay was green and soft, fragrant and fresh. A breeze blew through the leaves of the tree overhead, allowing the sunshine to sparkle in his eyes. He saw her coming down the path, not walking, but floating toward him, a sweet smile on her beautiful face. Her dark curls were down from the braids she usually wore, flowing softly over her shoulders and along her arms. His eyes settled on her lovely upturned mouth, then moved up to her small nose and her dark, fathomless eyes. He became lost in their depths. There you are, she said softly. I can hear you now. Can you hear me, my love? She knelt beside him and lowered her head and kissed his lips. I love you, she whispered. Do you know that? She didn't wait for him to answer. Stay with me now, she said. Let's do this together. He didn't understand what she was talking about, but suddenly he felt as if a warm light moved through his body, from his head, down his torso, down both arms, down his legs, lingering on one leg in particular. The light made him feel happy. It made him feel loved. It made him feel like there will never be another problem in his life. He felt energized. He felt powerful. He felt complete and utter joy. And then the light slowly dissipated and everything was dark. He felt her hand brush against his cheek. Open your eyes, Cam, she said. He did as she commanded and blinked several times. Her eyes came into focus and she smiled down at him. Hi there, she murmured, running her fingers over his forehead. Hey, he answered, his brow furrowed. How are you feeling? Wonderful, except you just woke me from a very pleasant dream. She smiled. The one under the tree where I walked up to you and Jesus healed you with light? His eyes opened wide. You did your little mind-melding thing, didn't you? She shrugged. And you did it to heal me, he thought a moment. I didn't realize that was happening in the dream. I just saw you walking toward me and thought you were beautiful. Actually, you didn't walk up to me. You kind of floated. She laughed. That's kind of creepy. He smiled, tried to sit up. Where am I? You're in a small hospital in Tuba City, Arizona. We flew you here in Jason's helicopter. Tuba City? Don't worry, the doc here did a good job. You cut your leg and lost a lot of blood, but you're going to be okay. You have 38 stitches. 38? Wow. The wow is that with an injury that bad, you ran such a long way, rode in a car for hours, climbed rocks, walked miles in the hot sun, and didn't die. I'd do anything to make sure you're safe. I see that. You've proven it over and over. When Julian Black was dragging me down that hallway, I thought I was never going to see you again, and it hurt so bad, just the thought. I love you so much, Cameron Wallace. He blinked sadly, but not enough to marry me? I keep saying I'm going to explain that, don't I? He brushed his hand over her hair. Yeah, you do. I promise I will. Now. But I don't now. She sighed and smiled. I like it when you take charge. He frowned. Well, Jeffy, that's a good thing. I'm glad you like it. Now, no more stalling. Tell me why you don't want to marry me. Okay. Let me see if I can explain, because actually I'm not really very clear myself about my hesitation. You see, I've gotten so used to thinking outside the box about medicine, I do it about everything. I see that some things are the way they are just because they've been that way for so long. Medicine is like that. So is matrimony. I won't go through all the history of marriage because there is no single history. It evolved through many different regions, cultures, and religions. Marriage is as old as and originated from the very first couple, Cam corrected, and it was ordained by God. Yes, but then it evolved from there, Jeffy argued. Its purpose, like changed, or was used for more nefarious purposes. It was sometimes to protect bloodlines, the parentage, and sometimes to make a contract about property rights. And that property included the female, and I got a problem with the archaic idea that females are property. I don't think that's how God intended it. If you want to go back to the first couple, Eve was made as a companion and helpmeet to Adam, not as his property. Agreed, Cam put in. And I know marriage doesn't seem to be as much about property rights anymore, not in our country and maybe other countries anymore, though it is still like that in some countries and some religions. It might seem now that marriage is all about being with the one you love, like it's all about love. However, if you look closely at what one person owns becomes communal property, unless there is a prenup, which means it's still about property. Cam nodded. Because what's mine is yours. But you're talking in circles. I know. I'm thinking out loud. Bear with me. Okay. So it came to be about property. And really, I have no problem with that, with combining assets for the good of the family, as long as the female is not thought of as a man's property. I get that, and I understand the resistance there. Still, my love, if you're my girl, you're my girl, and I'm your guy. So it does imply ownership in a way, but I understand the slight nuances. Jeffy sighed and nodded. I'm trying to reason this out in my cluttered brain, and I guess I have nothing against marriage, especially marriages like my parents and my brothers and sister and many of our friends. Really, they wanted to declare to the world the love they have for each other. And marriage is ordained by God. I'm with that. It's just that I feel that marriage should be about our love for each other. I don't think the law should be involved in matters of the heart. I want to be yours, Cam, and I want you to be mine. Which again sounds kind of like property, yours and mine, doesn't it? I'm a little confused. Well, maybe you have a little too much information running around in that brilliant brain of yours, Cam said with a smile. She grimaced. I do want to wake up every day and know that you're by my side because you want to be, because you choose to be that day, not because some legal paper says you're not free. She heaved a sigh. Does any of this make sense? Do you understand my hesitation? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? He smiled. My Jeffy, could I love you any more than I do right now? Well, why do you say that? Because you've always been so different, so unique, so you. I think I understand what you're saying. I do. I really do. Then you agree? I understand, but agree? No. Not if what you want me to agree with is you don't want to make it a legal marriage. I'm going to state a few facts that you may not agree with, though, knowing your father and brothers, I really don't understand how you couldn't agree. First fact, women benefit from marriage. Marriage fulfills women. The role of wife and mother is the most fulfilling thing most women can do. Now, let me say real quick that you are special and have a special calling, and I get that. Still, Jeffy, fact number 2. The alternative to you not marrying me is for you to stay single and go on with your life. How empty is that? How will that feel when you're 50 and old and lonely and haven't created a family of your own? I want a wife and mother for my children, and I want you, and I want more than us simply moving in together because we love each other. I want to be part of your family. I want us to be a family. I want us to have children. Children conceived in love, yes, but children who legally belong to both of us. She smiled brightly. I want those things too, Cam, and you are making a superb argument. Well then, marry me. I swear to you I won't think of you as my property. I will be with you every day because I want to be. Isn't the problem only that you want me to understand those things before we marry? And I do, completely. We are a partnership. We will love each other and support each other. I will support and protect you, and you will support and protect me. And we will make a commitment of love to each other publicly. That is really what seals the deal, much more than some legal binding contract. But the legal contract in this day and age is important. However, I agree with what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. I'm willing to give myself to you in front of God. I will stay with you not only because I have love for you, but because I want to always do God's will. I won't be staying with you because a piece of paper says I must. I'll stay with you because in front of God, I vowed to stay with you. And that vow is as important as life to me. But Jeffy, listen to me a minute. I have some strong feelings about our roles as man and woman, husband and wife. He stopped and blew out a breath and thought hard because what he was about to say may end the whole thing. Still, it had to be said, and he was a man, and he would have his say. Go ahead, Cam, I'm listening. Okay, but listen with your heart and not your super brain. She smiled and nodded. I'm trying. It's a battle. I understand. He sighed. A few minutes ago, you said you love it when I take charge. And there's an actual reason for that. A normal, natural, instinctive reason for that. Because since the beginning of time, women looked to men to lead, support, and protect, which we've already talked about. That to some men means they get to be the boss of you, order you around, tell you what you can and can't do, but that's not how I see it. Still, if I told you to go straight to hide in the basement, I would expect you to obey me, because out of respect, you would know that I'm trying to protect you and that I know how to do that. Of course, there are exceptions to that. She smiled. Yeah, like maybe you didn't know that the bad guy snuck into the basement, and I did know. She pointed to her head. He nodded. Exactly. But right now I'm talking about role models and the theme that's becoming mainstream, that strong, masculine men are toxic. I don't fall for that, and I hope you don't either. Men are physically stronger than women. Men do the hard jobs, the jobs no one else wants to do. Strong men like your father and brothers, they are good guys. Strong men are not to be ordered around by some pushy women who think they should be treated like a queen. And yet, strong men are confident enough to do things their wives ask them to do because they're not threatened and they understand that the relationship is a partnership. So what are you saying? Jeffy asked. I guess I'm saying that I want you to know that it's okay if I take the lead. Not only okay, but you should be able to depend on me to take the lead. And I do that by staying close to God, by doing His will. Because if I'm doing God's will, then I'm doing what's best for our family. That's the kind of man you can depend on. You can recognize my mistakes, you can call them out, and I'll make the corrections. You can depend on me to do that. You know, Cam, Jeffy said, I love Jesus. He is with me always. He is a still small voice inside me, and that voice is telling me right now that what you're saying is right and true. Cam nodded. I love him too, he smiled. So let's write a ceremony to declare our love in front of God, Jesus, the angels, and all of our loved ones and friends, and we will be husband and wife. We won't have just anyone officiate. We can have someone we love and respect officiate. We can make it special, Jeffy. We can make it fit our beliefs. She nodded. As long as you understand that if I declare myself to be your wife, then I am your wife. Not because some judge or clergyman says it's okay for us to be husband and wife. That's how I see it. And how do you see the part about a man protecting his family? Well, as long as I have respect and admiration for that man, I'm all in, like my father. I respect him and admire him because I know and understand he's close to God and striving to do what God wants him to do, which is love and protect his family. My father is wise, and I now see you in that same light. Cam smiled and put his hand over his heart. I'm honored by those words, Jeffy. It's what I tried so hard for, to gain your respect. You have it. I trust you, Cam, to take care of me, to protect me, to keep progressing in life and to live so that you can hear God's voice. Cam smiled. So, just to be clear, I'm asking again. June Flower Kino, will you marry me? She smiled. Yes, Cameron Wallace, I will marry you. She clapped her hands together. And we can have a giant party, and we'll invite everyone we know, and it will be so much fun. A giant party, he repeated. Giant. Wow, you went from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. She shrugged. Well, when I'm in, I'm in. Where would you like to have this giant party, he asked. Where would you? He thought a moment and sighed. At your parents' home, on that beautiful green front lawn. Really? That's kind of surprising. Yeah, whenever I was away from you, I pictured myself driving up that long driveway. I saw you opening the front door, jumping up and down madly like you did when you were a teenager, and then you would run down the steps and across that green grass like something out of a fairy tale. I was always so happy to see you. So, Juneflower Kino, we're going to get married and be a family. She smiled. We are, she said as she leaned down and pressed her lips to his. He growled, cupped the back of her neck, and deepened the kiss. His hand took hers, their fingers intertwined, And then she shrieked as he jerked her into the bed with him. And that is the end of chapter 15.